I just got back from seeing a Queensland premiere screening of Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, one of the most anticipated films of the year. And I have plenty of thoughts, so let's get into it. As you probably already know, Furiosa is the prequel to Mad Max Fury Road, focusing on Furiosa, who was an absolute standout in that movie and a character that I'm sure we all wanted to learn a little bit more about because she's so fascinating and was performed brilliantly by Charlize Theron in that film. In Furiosa, she's played by Anya Taylor-Joy, and they weren't lying in this title. This is a saga that goes for many, many years in these characters' lives, is a big, epic tale that is one of the most ambitious projects in the Mad Max universe. And that is saying something because Fury Road was pretty insane with what it managed to achieve. Now, I am going to make some comparisons to Fury Road because they're very similar in their stylistic choices, and they obviously link to one another. The other three Mad Max films in the past don't really connect with these two movies. They're kind of their own separate reboot thing. And you can just tell by the way that they look, what is kind of being explored, the way that the world has changed in these movies is completely different. But I think that it was a necessary choice in making this world very fascinating to explore. There has been a lot of hype around this movie as well. It got a 7-minute standing ovation at the Cannes Film Festival. I heard some chatter about this being the best prequel ever. I don't know about that. I think that's a little bit too much in terms of just early praise, just try and hype up a movie. But this is a really great film, a fantastic prequel that connects seamlessly to Mad Max Fury Road, to the point where you could almost watch both these movies back to back and it would be one very long, very epic movie that would just be such a fun watch. And there are differences in Furiosa compared to Fury Road that might take you by surprise. I have noticed that George Miller does like to do something very distinctly different with each of these Mad Max movies. And these two in particular, while stylistically they might be similar in some aspects, especially the color palette and the cinematography, there are very distinct stylistic choices and narrative choices in Furiosa that make this feel different. And because of that, it does some things better than Fury Road, but it also does some things that don't work quite as well as Fury Road. Overall though, this is a very great movie that really surprised me with how quickly this thing flowed. This movie is 2.5 hours long, and I was very ready to say that this movie was going to be too long for what it was trying to achieve, but that's just not the case at all. I actually think the runtime really benefits this movie, and the way that it progresses and the way that it is cut together makes it a very quick 2.5 hours. When we reached the end of that movie, I was like, oh my god, that's it? Like, we could have had another half an hour and I probably still wouldn't be that tired afterwards. I just think that it was an excellent use of pacing, and George Miller is at a point in his career now where he knows exactly what he wants out of his films. He has mastered his style of filmmaking. It took some tries and some failures in the process to build up to what he has done in Furiosa, and has really improved greatly in certain aspects of his filmmaking to make this a very enjoyable watch. So the first thing that I think is just instantly a massive improvement and the best aspect of this film is actually its screenplay, and that is very surprising if you follow George Miller's filmography. You know that he is a director that is amazing at creating spectacular action sequences, fun, in-your-face, balls to the wall, adrenaline-filled moments. But when it comes to making his characters talk to one another, there are usually some problems, some pacing issues, and things of that nature. And you could see that he has actually built that up over the years. And most notably, when he made his previous film, 3,000 Years of Longing, you could see some slight improvements in the way that he writes dialogue. And in Furiosa that really comes to a head. I think the writing here is absolutely fantastic. The characters are so interesting. There are some that don't say that much. Anya Taylor-Joy's Furiosa does not talk that much, similar to Max in the Mad Max movies. But there are some that love to talk. Chris Hemsworth as this antagonist says a lot in this movie, and I was so compelled by every word he said. And that is a combination of both the screenplay itself and Chris Hemsworth's performance. Since we're on that topic, I think that this is the best performance he has ever given. It's something that he has never done before. I love just the crazy Australian accent, and he's surprisingly funny, but he's so twisted at the same time. And I really, really like the way that this character builds and the way that George Miller frames who this character is and why he does the things that he does. I think he was fantastic in this film, and this character just fits in this world so well. I also really love the scenes where he played off a Morton Joe, who was incredibly fascinating character and really puts you at this little bit of a interesting moment in the film where these two characters meet, and they're both villains in their own right, and you don't really know who to support in those moments. And I think that was just really well handled and just something that I think was worth noting and mentioning, because it really is a testament to the brilliant screenplay and the amazing performances. Now let's get into the lead herself, Furiosa, Anya Taylor-Joy. I think that her as this character was seamless. I think she's just as good as Charlize Theron was in the role. She is just fantastic, and the way that this character progresses over the course of this film is very interesting. You instantly connect with her and you understand her motivations from the very get-go. And Anya Taylor-Joy is obviously a fantastic actress and is able to navigate through these emotions that the character is feeling and these different stages of her life where she really has to be very quiet and indistinguishable and unnoticed. And you slowly see her become the character that we recognize in Mad Max Fury Road. I thought that transition was very seamless and is what makes this such a brilliant prequel to Fury Road. I can't believe we've gone this long without talking about the action sequences. Of course, they're really, really brilliant. I quite enjoyed it. I wouldn't say they're as good as the ones as Fury Road, because that's all that movie kind of was. It was just action set piece after action set piece. Well, this kind of takes a more reserved, slower approach, and George Miller builds that from the very beginning of this film. He gives you his intention straight away. There is no mistake in what he's trying to do. But that doesn't mean there's no action in this film. There's plenty of it, definitely. And I thought they were all quite great. They were all well shot, very, very bombastic and crazy, and expertly edited. This is one of the best edited films of the year, with just amazing cinematography spliced with great editing. George Miller knows exactly what shots to cut to that completely change your perspective on a scene or creates tension, and that really bombastic and loud score really complements the film. I think technically this is quite a powerhouse. The only noticeable error that was really seen in those moments was that this film relies a lot more on visual effects than what I recognized Fury Road to do. Of course, there are moments where it does that in Fury Road, but here it feels like it's almost all the time, and there were moments that felt a little bit janky. There's a moment in a car where one of the characters is driving up a hill, and they kind of hit the top of the hill, and instead of just going over really seamlessly and nicely, it goes up and then it goes boom. Like it's a bit janky, and that's all because of some of the visual effects at times. Other times it is great and really noticeable, but it is an inconsistency in the film that is worth mentioning and noting. Another noticeable error in this film that I found was that there were some moments that the pacing kind of faltered, and some characters were just not as important as others. I'm really specifically talking about Tom Burke's character, who, make no mistake, is really well performed. I mean, he pulled off a really great Australian accent, and I do like the character, but his implementation within the film doesn't quite work as well and pulls away from the overall focus of the film. So for people that have a hard time with the longer runtime, I think those moments were the ones where you could have trimmed it a little bit to make it really tight. However, the runtime wasn't a problem for me, but there were moments like that where it just falters a little bit. I mean, what more is there to say? George Miller has outdone himself again with this movie. It was an absolute blast to watch on the big screen. It is just so worthwhile seeing it there. All of his films, especially in the last 10 or so years, deserve to be seen on the big screen, and this is no exception. Especially if you have a great sound system in your theater as well, because holy shit, some of the surround sound moments were incredible. There was a moment where someone calls out to someone, and I legitimately thought someone was talking in the theater for a minute, because I turned and no one was talking, but it was coming from the film. There's moments like that where it just feels so immersive and locks you into this world. There's so much more world building here. It's so much more ambitious. For those of you that didn't quite connect with the simplicity of Fury Road and wanted to see more of this fascinating world that George Miller has built, you are going to love Furiosa, because you see so much more with the factions and different parts of the wasteland, and it makes it very fascinating to really explore that and get some answers to some questions that you might have had in Fury Road. Furiosa is a great time with great performances, very good writing, and excellent action set pieces. There are definitely some moments that falter. It's not always consistent. It's hard for me to say whether it is better than Fury Road or not, but whether or not you prefer this or Fury Road, it is an excellent complementary piece to that film. And I think it is definitely worth your time if you're a huge fan of Fury Road. I think that you will not be disappointed here. The characters are so great, and despite some hiccups here and there, this is just such a blast in the theater. As a score, I'm going to give Furiosa a strong 4 out of 5, and I definitely recommend that you check this one out in theaters. And those are my thoughts towards Furiosa. When you see the film, let me know what you think about it in the comments below, and I'd really like to know whether you prefer this or Fury Road, and what made you come to that conclusion? Because right now, I don't really know what people would prefer, because there's just so many different elements at play. One strengths is another film's weaknesses and vice versa. So it kind of depends on what you prefer out of these movies. It's hard to tell at the moment. I'm probably edging towards Fury Road being a little bit better, but such a great complimentary movie. Anyway, let me know what your thoughts are. Before I go as well, I have gotten my very first member, Sam Georges. Thank you so much for becoming a member. I just really wanted to highlight that. It's absolutely amazing and means the absolute world to me. If you're interested in becoming a member, hit the join button down below. I've also released some new merch, so check that out if you're interested. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.